Welcome to video 10.1 on solutions. This video is going to help you understand what a solution is and how they are made. In this video, you're also going to be able to explain the different contents that make up the different kind of solutions. So as we get started, you'll see a good-sized list of different vocabulary terms talking about solutions. So as we jump right in, we see here that solutions are when we mix two things together. For example, if you have a chemical that is soluble, means it will dissolve in a solution or in a solvent, they will get mixed together. And if they mix together uniformly, we have what's called a solution or a true solution. So typically think of a homogeneous solution is what we're talking about here. And so what happens is we have a solute, something like sugar, that gets dissolved into the medium like a solvent, which is like water. So sugar into water, they mix together, this dissolves, and now what we're left with is a solution, a sugar-water solution. So again, a couple of quick recap here. The solute is what's being dissolved. The solvent is what's doing the dissolving. The solution is those things being mixed together. So we've already learned about homogeneous and heterogeneous, but here are some few other words that we're going to look at. So first thing we can see here is that we have something called a suspension. So if a solution, like if you put mud in water, those particles might be able to create a solution for a few moments, but eventually that mud or that dirt will begin to settle to the bottom. So that's called a suspension solution. So where, again, the particles can mix for a little bit, but eventually they'll settle out. That's called a suspension. The other kind of solution we see here is a colloid. Colloid are things that have very large particles in there, and they will mix with the water or mix with whatever solvent you're using, but they will not allow light to pass through. So think about milk. Milk would be an example. You can think of paint, but this is where we have a solution that you know it's mixed together, and as long as you keep it stirred up, you cannot see through it. As we continue to move on, next, a big major part of, or another major kind of solution is electrolytes. Electrolytes are famous because you hear them about Gatorade and Powerade. Electrolytes are the solution that have the ability to conduct electricity. And so what they have is, and how they are defined, is by being a solution that has ions, positive and negative charge ions, floating around in that solution. So salt water is a major example of an electrolyte. The opposite of that would be your non-electrolytes. That's when we have not ions floating around in the water, but just molecules. So again, electrolytes are just ions in solution. Molecules in solution are your non-electrolytes. The big way to identify whether something will become an electrolyte or not when it's put into water is to look at what kind of compound it is. If it's an ionic compound, then it will form electrolytes, which makes sense because ionic compounds are made of ions, and when they're put in solution, they will dissociate, creating an electrolyte solution. Likewise, if we have something that's a molecule, something that is bonded together covalently, when that is put into a solution, if it was to dissolve, it will just simply make a non-electrolyte solution. A couple other key ideas here when we talk about solutions is unsaturation versus saturated versus supersaturated. So there's only so much product or solute that you could put into a solution. So if something's going to dissolve, think about your sugar. If my sugar is going to dissolve and mix, there's 3 stages of what's going to happen. There's a point where I put in so much sugar that it begins to collect at the bottom. This would be called a supersaturated solution. So if I put so much solute into the water and it collects at the bottom, you see the crystals at the bottom, that's called a supersaturated solution. Or if I just add a little bit of sugar and it all mixes, and if I can keep adding sugar and it can keep mixing, that would be called an unsaturated solution. And then the perfect balance would be called the saturated solution. This is a point where you have just the right amount of sugar mixed with just the right amount of water, or just the right amount of solute with just the right amount of solvent, where you don't see anything at the bottom, but it's all mixed evenly. That's called a saturated solution, and it reached the saturation point. So again, think of it like Goldilocks. Bed's too small, bed's just right, bed's too big. I have not enough solute, just the perfect amount of solute, too much solute. The final terms we're going to look at as we get to be introduced in solution is the word immiscible versus miscible. One easy way to think about what this means is think about the word mixable. Immixable means these things cannot mix. These things cannot dissolve. This is like your oil and water. They do not mix. They do not dissolve in each other. And the opposite would be miscible, something that can dissolve, something that can mix. So the key idea here is thinking about this idea like dissolves likes. We learned a couple of chapters ago about molecular geometry. We talked about things like polarity and how things as a molecule can be either polar or nonpolar. So if we go back and we think about that geometry, likes dissolve likes means that a polar molecule will dissolve other polar molecules, or a nonpolar molecule will only be miscible with other nonpolar molecules. So we might have to think back a few chapters on how we did polarity, but this is the key idea. So really this was a short, sweet video just to get you used to the ideas of solutions, get you thinking about it, some definitions, some key terms. As we talk about this and start doing the math, it's key that you do understand these terms. So again, long story short, there's a variety of different solutions, suspensions and colloids out there. And the other major idea here is electrolytes can conduct electricity while non-electrolytes do not. And again, electrolyte is just ions in a solution. Non-electrolytes are molecules in solution. Have a great day.